Okay. Now I'm going to talk about the first research method that I'm going to talk about in this PowerPoint presentation. There are three total methods that I'll talk about, and what I'll do is describe each method and then give you the strengths and weaknesses of each method, because there is no perfect research method. They all have strengths, they all have weaknesses. It kind of depends on what you want to study, but we'll get into that. And then I'll try to give you some examples, or at least one example of that method in practice. So, okay, I'll start out with ethnography. This is, again, not unique to sociology. This ethnography came, I believe, out of anthropology. A lot of anthropologists use ethnographic research methods. So what an ethnography is, it's a first-hand study where a researcher uses something that's often called participant observation, where a researcher takes part in the activities that he or she is studying. Also, interviews can be part of ethnographies. So an example of participant observation is, this is an example that I give at the bottom of this slide, but I'll just say it now. Alice Goffman's On the Run book it's an ethnographic study where she's observing the happenings on 6th Street in Philadelphia, but she's also a participant in the sense that she's living there and interacting with the people that she's studying, interviewing them from time to time, but also just going about the daily business with them as somewhat of a participant. So that's what the participant observation name refers to. So, okay, ethnographic studies. The main strength of ethnography is that you can get real in-depth information in an ethnographic study. Goffman is able to. A lot of it has to do with gaining the trust of the people you're studying. If you just go in, like one of the next method I'm going to talk about is a survey. If you just go into a community with a bunch of surveys and start handing them out, people might, they might answer them. A lot of them might just throw away the survey. But people just might not really open up on a survey in the same way that they would open up to someone who they trust. So you can really get in-depth information with an ethnographic study. However, ethnographies, it's really only doable for pretty small groups. You just can't, gain the trust of a huge population of people to have them open up to you. Plus, it would take so much time to interview some huge population of people. Ethnography is really it's really only useful for very small groups. Additionally, another limitation of ethnography is it's difficult to generalize your findings. To generalize, or generalizability refers to, as I've put in parentheses here, a generalizable study is one where you can apply the conclusions from a small group that you studied to a larger population. So, this is the question. With Alice Goffman, I think Alice Goffman is trying to generalize her findings in the sense that she's trying to say that, okay, this neighborhood in Philadelphia that she's studying is similar to a lot of urban neighborhoods in the United States. It faces a lot of the same issues, particularly with law enforcement. But someone might, some critic might make the claim that, no, what you're talking about is really unique to that particular neighborhood or to the city of Philadelphia, and you can't generalize. So ethnographies, particularly anthropological ethnographies about like an isolated tribe somewhere on an island somewhere in the world, that's the kind of thing where, those kind of findings are not going to be that generalizable. People might still be interested in them, but you might not be able to claim that, like, oh, this tribe that hasn't seen outsiders ever before me, that the issues they face are relevant to people in the United States or something like that. Okay. So moving on. Oh yeah. Before I get into method number 2, I am going to intersperse a couple of other kind of vocabulary things here. So there's a difference between what are called quantitative and qualitative data. This is, again, not just unique to sociology. Quantitative data is data collected in numerical form that can be counted. That's stuff like income level, where you can count the dollars, or count the years of education. That's another example. Qualitative data, this is data that's not collected in numerical form. Oftentimes, qualitative data is collected in response, or given in response to open-ended questions on a survey. I wanted to talk about qualitative data and quantitative data before talking about surveys because this is relevant to survey discussion. An open-ended question on a survey is a question where someone would be like, what do you think of blank? What do you think of the president's performance these days? And you're not saying, there are two different ways, or at least two different ways you could structure the responses to a question like that. You could give people what are called fixed responses, where they have the option to say, like, I strongly approve, I approve, I have no feelings, I disapprove, or I strongly disapprove of the president's performance. And that way you can kind of that gets into quantitative. You can quantify those kind of results because you can say, oh, 60% of people strongly approve, or whatever. You can quantify those results pretty easily. But if you just make that an open-ended question and you just say, what do you think of the president's performance? And you let people either talk as long as they want or write as long as they want what they think of the president's performance. That's qualitative data. It becomes difficult to quantify that because you'd have to, it just takes a lot more time to quantify that. And you also might sort of miss a lot of the details of what people say if you just read, 10 paragraphs that somebody wrote and then you just boil it down to, oh, they approve of the president's performance. You're missing a lot there. So ethnographic data is often in qualitative form. These are oftentimes, observations or interviews with people where the interview is not very structured. You just let people kind of talk about, go on as long as they want in response to whatever questions you might have. Right. So let me talk about surveys. So this is following on what I was talking